Does the following sound familiar? You're in Spanish class and you're able to understand everything that's being said perfectly, but then you meet native Spanish speakers and you try to practice your Spanish, and this happens. Hola, buenas, ¿qué tal? Dice tú. Yo quiero aventar tan que te tengo malo para tener que jurar me vas a tener que llevar el venderocio. Me vas a dar el fin de semana. ¿Qué? Tengo miedo, mamá. Now, you don't have to worry. This is a rite of passage that all Spanish learners go through. And there are some dialects that even natives sometimes struggle to understand. But what if I told you that it doesn't have to be this way? Well, stick around until the end of this video because I'm going to share with you 2 tricks that can help you understand any dialect of Spanish that you come across. Hi, I'm Victor. You can simply call me Bolton, and I've spent thousands of hours studying linguistics and foreign languages. I was able to learn Spanish on my own in just 3 months. You can check the video on that on my channel. And then I continued honing my linguistic abilities in MIT's Spanish classes. These are the exercises that I've used to teach myself how to understand dialects, como el español caribeño o el andaluz. ¡Vamos! First, let's go over how we can use Bad Bunny's music to develop an appreciation of the features of Caribbean Spanish, so they don't catch us off guard. Para que nos acostumbremos a alguna variedad del español que nos interese, siempre es buena idea escuchar muchas canciones, muchas entrevistas, muchos videos que la representen. In order to get used to a particular variety of Spanish that interests us, it's always a good idea to listen to a lot of songs, a lot of interviews, and a lot of videos that represent this variety. But we can internalize linguistic features even better by spending some effort analyzing such content. You're going to hear lyrics from Bad Bunny's hit song "DeBÍ tirar más FOToS" pronounced in an accent similar to Puerto Rican Spanish and in a more neutral accent. Then I will walk you through how you're supposed to go about this comparative analysis. Primero, español puertorriqueño.
Debí tirar más fotos de cuando te tuve, debí darte más besos y abrazos las veces que pude.
Entonces, un acento más neutro.
Debí tirar más fotos de cuando te tuve, debí darte más besos y abrazos las veces que pude.
Doesn't sound just as good, does it? I've provided you with a close phonetic transcription of the 2 variants, and in order to do this exercise well, the 2 questions that you need to answer are: first, what is different? Second, when is it different? Don't worry if you're not able to get this 100% correct. It's the effort that counts, because effort is what makes us learn. So feel free to pause this video and ponder a little bit, and I'll be back in. By now you've probably noticed that the major differences consist of R pronounced as L and S not being pronounced at all. And this doesn't happen everywhere, but only in some situations. But how do we figure out when this happens and when this doesn't happen? Let's zoom in on the words that have either 2 R's or 2 S's, but only one of them changes. In this excerpt, the words that we have are TiRAR and besos. TiRAR becomes tirar. Besos becomes beso. This data is just enough to start building hypotheses that might be true or might not be true, but at least are a step in the right direction. The 2 hypotheses that we can build is First, that maybe this only happens at the end of the words, or second, this happens at the end of syllables. But we can also notice that darte becomes dalte, which supports the second hypothesis, at least for the eres. And as we continue to analyze more data, the more accurate our hypotheses will become. But I think I've demonstrated enough of this example. Let's actually see what are the defining features of Caribbean Spanish and Puerto Rican Spanish. The first feature that we see is what linguists call S-aspiration. It's when an S sound starts to be pronounced more like a sound, like in the English heat wave. Este becomes este. This feature is typical for southern Spain, the Canaries, and coastal and low-lying areas of Latin America. In most varieties, this only occurs at the end of syllables, but in some regions of Central America, you can also hear this happen elsewhere in the word. For example, in Honduras, you might hear the locals say nosotros. Quite frequently, speakers also take this process one step further and drop the sounds entirely. So, este becomes ete. The process that distinguishes Caribbean Spanish from other varieties is called R-lateralization. It's called lateralization because when you make the L sound, you're pushing air out of your mouth from the sides of your tongue, so the air comes out laterally. Arma, weapon, is pronounced like alma, soul. If we continue to dig in, we're going to find a lot more features of Caribbean Spanish that generally don't inhibit comprehension as much, but still contribute to the overall richness of this dialect. The between vowels is generally dropped, so nada becomes na. Ene at the end of words can be pronounced further back in the mouth, so instead of San Juan, you might hear San Juan. Jota can become aspirated, so it's pronounced like Jota. And something that you might hear in more rural regions of Puerto Rico is that R doble is pronounced like French R. Puertorriqueño becomes Puertorriqueño. So this was my overview of my first exercise and a brief introduction to Caribbean Spanish. But this analytical strategy isn't always as straightforward for certain varieties of Spanish. Por ejemplo, ¿sabías que el andaluz oriental y otras variedades vecinas no tienen 5 vocales, sino 8 o 10? That's right. Eastern Andalusian and some other nearby varieties of Spanish don't have 5 vowels like the standard, but instead have 8 or 10 vowels. My point is, even professional linguists who do this sort of analysis for a living can't agree if these varieties have 8 vowels or 10 vowels. So to comprehend and appreciate these dialects, we need another strategy. What I propose in these cases is shadowing, meaning listen to somebody who speaks this variety and then repeat after. Slow down the video if you have to in order to understand all the sounds that are being said. Repeat it slowly, build up the speed, and try to get closer to the natural pronunciation. Here, we're not relying on our brain to figure it out, but instead on our tongue, on the muscles in our mouth. The more you shadow speakers of a particular variety, the better you will become at imitating them, and the better you are at imitating them, you are better at understanding them. Now, I just have to point out that when you're imitating somebody's speech, you have to approach this delicately and tactfully. Some speakers can understandably so feel very defensive about their speech, because very commonly when one vernacular for very stupid reasons is considered quote-unquote less prestigious or less correct, a lot of times when speakers of the more prestigious and more correct vernaculars imitate somebody else, they do so to mock them, insult them. I think it's really ugly and really sad that every language deals with stigmatization of its regional linguistic wealth. But, you know, sometimes life is like that. I've seen it time and time again among fellow international students who subconsciously, out of a desire to fit in, start to mimic somebody else. And it gets really awkward because people are thinking, why are you suddenly talking like that? You are not supposed to talk like that. So if you're mimicking somebody's speech, make sure you make it clear that you're doing so out of appreciation for educational purposes. And if you are mocking anyone, let it be a mockery of language purists. Just exercise common sense, and if you accidentally end up offending anybody, apologize, take accountability, and learn and grow from this experience. To wrap up, generally, when a speaker with a thicker regional accent notices that you, as a language learner, are struggling to understand them, they will switch to a more neutral accent and will try to accommodate you. But as you're progressing in your Spanish learning journey, it's generally a really nice and kind gesture to put in some effort into understanding the vernaculars of those who you're interacting with the most. Try to release speakers of the burden to always accommodate you by hiding speech that they're generally quite proud of. I've shared 2 strategies that I've used to better understand 2 varieties of Spanish that I personally find fascinating. Let me know in the comments what your favorite varieties of Spanish are. And let me know how badly I butchered my attempt at Andalusian. And if you enjoyed this video and learned something from it, the general YouTuber spiel, you know it. You can repay me by liking and subscribing, if you find the topics interesting, of course. Check out my other videos. Thank you all for watching and sticking until the very end. I will see you next time. Ciao ciao! Eastern Andalusian and some other geographically close varieties have not 5, but 8, or this is 9, 10. No! I just flipped myself off.